We have more breaking news to tell you about. Remember this guy driving a Tesla, terrorizing other drivers in a number of Southern California road rage incidents a few years ago? Well, his name is Nathaniel Radimak. He's been arrested again, this time in Hawaii. Radimak was charged with multiple counts of assault in L.A. County in January of 2023. He was sentenced to 5 years in prison, but he didn't serve that 5 years. He was paroled in August of last year against the wishes of a number of his local victims. In the Hawaii case, he's accused of assaulting an 18-year-old female driver and her mother, who was a passenger, after a traffic incident yesterday in Honolulu.
You know, at some point in time, you just got to look at California Democrats and say, you are evil. I disavow you in every possible way. And this is a perfect example of a case that is reflective of that, because we're talking about a guy called Nathaniel Radimak, who you just heard was recently rearrested in the state of Hawaii for attacking women on the road. And the reason why this is on the state of California is because he was supposed to be serving a 5-year sentence for nearly a dozen attacks on women in the same exact scenarios due to his road rage. However, they released him in less than a year. He ended up going back out onto the streets, and what should be surprising to no one except a left-wing progressive, he has struck again. He has done the same exact crime. 2 more female victims in response to the fact that he was upset based on whatever occurred on the road, and we're supposed to pretend like this was somehow unforeseeable, that California made the right decision, and that Nathaniel Radimak is an innocent Baba Angel Aladdin who was just suffering from the consequences of poverty. And the real issue that we have in this particular case is that we just didn't arrest poverty. Explain to me how this is reflective of the fact that we need more welfare programs. Explain to me how this could not have been prevented by incapacitation, which, by the way, is the primary goal of prisons, to hold people that would reoffend out in society in custody so they don't reoffend out in society. And explain to me how anybody, including the California Parole Board, thought releasing him was a good idea. Now, we're going to get into this. We are going to break this down. But before we do, I want to thank everybody who supports this channel via actualjusticewarrior.com/join.
Give me the money. Give me the money. Okay?
Today, the teen driver's uncle speaking to us tonight from Hawaii.
I would hope that, HPD does prosecute him and do a better job than California, of keeping him behind bars, so that hopefully he can at least learn a lesson, maybe get some sort of help. It seems he has anger issues. He's lashing out, and who knows what he might be capable of next. It's only escalating.
We've learned there was also an infant in the victim's car as well. Again, Nathaniel Radimak is in jail in Honolulu tonight. He'll be facing a judge soon to learn the official charges he will face there.
So look, there's a bunch of videos of him attacking cars. There's actually some videos of him getting out of the car at gas stations, and it appears he's getting into a fist fight with people there. It's ridiculous. It's over the top. And obviously this is a man that's completely out of control. Again, one of the clips that they open with is him reversing his vehicle on the highway in order to stop in front of another vehicle, and then he gets out with a weapon and proceeds to attack them. And the thing is, this is not an issue of post-diction, where we're looking at him reoffending after the fact, and we say, oh wow, they shouldn't have released him. We do a lot of that on this channel when we tie it to specific policy, but in reality, this was foreseeable, this was predicted, and by the way, it was predicted by this same local news agency 8 months ago when he was released in the first place, and they contacted his previous victims.
Well, Nathaniel Radimak has a long criminal history that stretches nearly 2 decades across 8 states. His victims here in California tonight expressing not only their frustration, but also fear.
It makes me angry and disappointed to see that this person who has caused suffering and trauma walk free.
Nathaniel Radimak's Tesla road rage rampage spanned L.A. County in 2022 and 2023. This incident on the 2 freeway in Glendale involving a crowbar, slashed tires, and an attack on a valet, both in West Hollywood. And this woman left with a black eye after she was punched outside the Santa Anita Mall.
So right there in the previous local news segment, they rattle off a bunch of different incidents that he had related to road rage, including an attack on a valet person, including beating a woman to the point where she had a black eye, a bunch of other property damage instances. And again, this is all from the segment 8 months ago when they released him early when he was granted parole. And again, he was granted parole less than a 3-year in to a 5-year bid. Now, I hate to break it to you guys out there in the audience, but when you get sentenced to any kind of prison term, you can expect to serve anywhere from half to 2/3 of it maximum before you're eligible for some form of early release, unless, of course, there's a mandatory minimum that requires you to serve a specific amount of time in prison. So California would not be unique if he was released 2.5 to 3 years into the sentence, especially if you consider he might have been held pre-trial, which, by the way, in the state of California, they actually give you double time credit. So each 1 day that you're in jail awaiting trial counts as 2 days off your sentence going forward. But the fact is, even recognizing how prison time is often much shorter than the listed amount of time that you hear from the judge when you're in court and when you're convicted, this is significantly early. Again, this guy convicted of multiple assaults, multiple attacks. Some of the attacks used weapons. There was property damage. There was attacking individuals, people at work that had low escapability, like the valet, women that are vulnerable. He also attacked them, and he served less than a year before he was granted parole. He shouldn't have even gotten a parole hearing, let alone been granted parole. But that's the thing about the state of California. They are closing prisons in order to artificially reduce their capacity for inmates. They then shift these individuals to the county jail, and then the county jails end up being full, so they have to chuck these people out. They also do things that have been talked about by people like Anna Kasperi.
Oh, big, strong, big, bad Anna.
Which is reclassify a bunch of violent crimes, like all these different various assaults, as non-violent crimes, so it looks like they're just releasing non-violent individuals. But obviously, this guy is violent. Obviously, he was not only convicted of this, but most of these attacks were caught on video, so this guy is a problem. He has shown that he will repeat the behavior, and guess what? He is arrested again. He has attacked 2 other women on the road, and again, this was 100% predictable. And again, we will point to the previous victims who predicted it.
But tonight, Radimak is out of prison on parole after serving less than a year of a 5-year sentence for stalking, criminal threats, assault, and vandalism.
This was not just one isolated incident, which begs the question, is there hope to rehabilitate repeat offenders?
Look, to be clear, the data on rehabilitation is mixed, and some people do in fact become rehabilitated at certain points in time in their life. However, we do not have a good grasp or a good understanding of that. That being said, in this particular case, what rehabilitation could have been instituted for this individual? He was sentenced to 5 years, let out less than a year, so there's no real consequences for his actions. There's no deterrent effect for him to do it again. And in addition to that, you don't even incapacitate him, so you're just priming the society that he's going to move back into for further victimization. And all the victims that were attacked by him previous had the truth of it at the time that they did this parole hearing.
Several of his victims speaking today during a virtual press conference expressing their frustrations with the criminal justice system.
I highly doubt Radimak has learned from his mistakes and will be coming out a changed person after a short time.
We deserve a system that protects and supports victims, not one that allows perpetrators to commit crimes with such little consequence.
So you have these women right here that are saying, yeah, they should have held him. He's not going to be rehabilitated in that short amount of time. And I just want to point out that all these different progressives, all these different people that advocate for the criminal will also call themselves feminists. They will also call themselves defenders of women. They will also call out toxic masculinity and male violence against women. But the fact is, when they're faced with a male that is committing violence, and by the way, very disproportionately, it appears that he targets women with these road rage incidents, they let him out early. They give him a slap on the wrist. And again, I will point out, this is due to the fact that Gavin Newsom has artificially reduced prison capacity by closing prisons, and then they cite the overcrowding in the remaining prisons as an excuse for releasing these people early.
So how is it that Radimak is free after less than a year? A legal expert explaining it's due to overcrowding in California's prisons.
If someone commits a violent crime, like robbery, murder, rape, something of that nature, they will be kept longer into their sentence, 60 to the 80% marker. Anything short of that, criminal threats, vandalism, such as this case that we're talking about, it could be only 30 to 50%, which would explain why he got out so much sooner than everyone anticipated.
So they get this guy out here and he says, look, we try to hold people that are rapists, murderers, and more serious offenders for longer periods of time. But in cases like this, cases of vandalism, they're going to be released 30% of the way into their sentence, which is much, much earlier. And I will point out that 30% of a 5-year bid would be 1.5 years. So this is not even 30% of his sentence. And in addition to that, the crime that this guy committed was not vandalism. When you're punching women in the face, when you're on video assaulting a valet driver, when you're attacking people, you're not vandalizing cars. Like, what the hell is this guy even talking about? But this is what California does. They reclassify violent offenses. And by the way, the voters did not know that they were going to do this when they voted for propositions like Prop 47 into the non-violent category, despite the fact that they're expressly violent, obviously, and we could see it for ourselves. And then they release them based on these imagined or reimagined classifications. And this is the consequence of that. 2 more women are attacked, again, less than a year after he was released way too early on his 5-year sentence.
The California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation says Radimak was given 424 days of credit for time served while he awaited sentencing. His victims are cautious now that he's free.
Again, I didn't even have to watch this full segment to understand how he was released early in the state of California, because he was awaiting trial in jail. He got that double credit, which gave him 422 days. Then he had something like 8 months. So again, he's still under 2 years. So in and around 40% on a serious assault, a serious series of assaults, by the way. And then he was granted parole, even though obviously he learned nothing based on his actions. And this is just allowed to roll unimpeded in the state of California, because God forbid we hold the people who jump out of their car in the middle of the highway and savagely beat women accountable, because if we did do that, that would be really crushing. And how would this man be able to feed his starving family? Again, you may think he punched this woman in the face, the one with the black eye, because he can't control his behavior, because he's a violent individual, and therefore he should be removed from society. But did you think to yourself that the real problem was poverty? Did you think to yourself that we should put out an APB for poverty? As soon as we find out what car poverty is driving, what poverty is wearing, then maybe we could make that arrest and then solve this particular case, because that is how the left-wing Democrats in the state of California view this, even though that's absurd.
Many of the victims are terrified that Mr. Radimak will retaliate against them. Consider yourself warned. We will not be intimidated by you, and we will not be deterred.
So look, they bring out Gloria Allred, who is a very famous left-wing feminist lawyer. She's the go-to when you have a woman as the client for you to get somebody to defend you, get in the press and whatnot. And in this instance, I totally agree with her, although I understand why some people would just be put off by her based on her past actions and whatnot. But yeah, she's actually 100% right here. But get a load of the LA County District Attorney's Office distancing themselves from this particular case.
And the LA County District Attorney's Office also releasing a statement in response to Radimak's release, clarifying that it does not determine an inmate's release, and that and victim notification is up to the Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation.
Now look, normally I would throw the LA DA's office under the bus for this particular case, but the fact is they have a new representative, so the guy who's heading the office now wasn't heading it at the time that this segment was actually dropped. So again, it's not Gascon anymore. It's the new guy, the Republican who masqueraded as an independent in order to win this position and prosecute people, go with a tough on crime mindset. And in reality, that statement about how it's determined by the Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation is actually true. The state is what is passing these laws. Gavin Newsom, the guy pretending to be a moderate, in order to release these people. And I like the fact that they decided to rename the Department of Corrections to the Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation as a way to address the issues with the failing prison system, as if that does anything. But we all know that the Democratic playbook, the left-wing playbook, is that when there's an actual problem, just rename it and pretend that it's solved, and then the media will go along with it. So yeah, obviously this guy was going to be a reoffender. Obviously he was going to attack somebody again. He happened to go to the state of Hawaii and do that. Maybe they'll prosecute him more seriously there, but nobody should be surprised by this. And honestly, the Democrats should be ashamed of this, because this was so obviously predictable. They quite literally predicted it 8 months ago ago when he was released early. Now, of course, I want to know what you guys think about this down in the comments below. As per usual, if you like this video, then show me by leaving a like, subscribe for more content, follow me on my social media, support me via the support links in the description of this video. This has been me talking about a man who beats women, who was released by the state of California, and then he beat more women. Till next time.